Hello, and welcome to Managing Fatigue with MS. My name is Denise Kendrick, and I'm an occupational therapist working in the MS clinic in Vancouver, BC. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to tune in to this introduction to fatigue management. This is a topic that I'm passionate to present on because it's an area that I think can make a big impact on quality of life with MS. What I hope to be able to share with you is validation that your experience with fatigue is real and can be frustrating, but there are things that you can do to manage that frustration. I also hope that you walk away today with a better understanding of fatigue as a symptom, as well as a framework and some practical strategies that you can use to start to manage your fatigue a little better. There is no magic wand to treat fatigue and no single thing that you can do to make it go away. But managing fatigue, as you'll see, is done by making small changes throughout your day, every day. So let's get to it. So what is fatigue? Fatigue has been defined in many different ways. One commonly accepted definition is a subjective lack of physical and/or mental energy that is perceived by you as the individual or a caregiver to interfere with activities. So for the purpose of today, what we're thinking about in terms of fatigue is that it's an extreme sense of tiredness that makes it difficult to function. It's important to remember that the experience of fatigue is unique and different for everyone. Some of what you hear today might resonate, but there is no expectation that each of you is able to manage your fatigue in the same way. I hope that if you take one thing away from today's talk, it's an understanding of the importance of learning about and managing your own individual fatigue with the support from your friends, family, and your care team. As you can see, a high percentage, up to 95% of people with MS report fatigue. Of these, as high as 60% report that fatigue is their most troubling symptom. As with other MS symptoms, fatigue affects people differently. Some people will feel more physical fatigue, while others complain of a more cognitive fatigue, commonly called brain fog. There doesn't seem to be a strong relationship between fatigue and disease severity. For example, those who experience greater levels of physical disability don't necessarily experience higher fatigue. People can experience fatigue that interrupts their lifestyle or prevents them from working while having few other symptoms. Fatigue often worsens other symptoms, such as pain or numbness. For example, when your fatigue is high, you might notice that your balance is a little worse or you're clumsier using your hands. Fatigue is one of the #1 reason that people stop working. It's also multifactorial, meaning there's different aspects to fatigue, which we'll discuss in greater detail. It's important to remember that fatigue is out of proportion to the activity. So it's different from your spouse or your friend feeling tired after a long day of work. It's an invisible symptom, and it's often misinterpreted and misunderstood by others. Others can't see it and often need to heavily rely on your description to understand fatigue. Now we'll talk about the different types of fatigue. So the terms primary and secondary here are interchangeable. Some people refer to this as MS and non-MS fatigue. Primary, otherwise called MS fatigue, is fatigue that's really caused by the disease itself. It's a diagnosis of elimination, meaning that it can't be called primary MS fatigue until all other contributing factors have been ruled out. So what causes primary fatigue? One way to think about it is that because MS impairs the central nervous system, the body has to work that much harder to send and receive information. And that extra work is tiring and can result in fatigue. Secondary fatigue, also called non-MS fatigue, is fatigue that's caused by other factors, often lifestyle factors. And we call those contributing factors. These are things like poor sleep, difficulty with mobility, mood issues, stress, poor nutrition, lack of physical activity, or side effects from medications. When we look at fatigue, we like to think about it in categories of 3 types of fatigue, or 3 ways that fatigue can manifest. So physical or motor fatigue is the kind of fatigue that's best understood and the one that people most often think about. This type of physical fatigue can either be central, which is a more general fatigue, and that's sometimes called lassitude fatigue, and that often feels like a whole body tiredness. There's also a type of physical fatigue that we often call motor fatigue, and that's usually specific to a part of the body. For example, your leg muscles might get tired after walking for a period of time, and we would refer to that as motor fatigue in your leg. The less understood type of fatigue is called cognitive fatigue. This is often described as a brain fog and may feel like a slowing down in your thinking after doing cognitively demanding tasks. What's important to remember is that there's a lot of tasks that we do throughout our day that are cognitively demanding, even if they're not challenging. So even things like following a conversation or making a meal demands our attention, our memory, and other cognitive functions, and those can tire in the same way our muscles can tire. Activities that require us to exert a lot of attention, problem solving, and on-the-spot decision-making are likely to result in higher cognitive fatigue. This is often why people with MS find socializing in busy settings can result in a lot of fatigue. Emotional fatigue can manifest often as frustration, irritability, and decreased motivation. It's important to remember that all three types of fatigue can be present at the same time or at different points in time, and also might influence each other. Managing fatigue can often be thought of as a process. So I want to walk you through this process so that you can keep it in the back of your mind as a framework or a bit of a systematic way to start managing. The first step in this process is understanding your energy and learning about your own fatigue. This can be done by tracking energy levels. Once you've done this, it's important to communicate to others in your life so that they can also understand your fatigue and help you to start managing it. The second step in this process is to maximize your energy. So what this means is just making sure that at the beginning of each day, you have the most energy to start out with that you can have. The last step is making sure that you're using your energy most efficiently. There are a lot of different ways to do things, and often we don't really take the time to stop and think about why we're going about our activities in a certain way. If we can pull ourselves off of autopilot, we'll often realize that we might not be doing things in the most efficient way. I like to think of this as a bit of detective work. So why is it important to get to know your energy patterns? I guess it's a little bit like trying to start an exercise program without knowing your exercise tolerance. If I decided to start running without first assessing how long I can run for, I'm going to be frustrated because I might have set a goal that's not realistic for where I'm at. The same can be said for managing fatigue. It's important to know your energy patterns and what some people might call your energy envelope so that you can make more informed decisions about how you're going to go about spending that energy. There are lots of ways to assess your own fatigue, but a good way is to use some kind of tracking tool. You can either build one yourself or look for something online. Most importantly, you want to track your fatigue or energy level, which you can use a scale of 1 to 10. And you'll also want to track what you're doing at those times of the day, as well as making note of where you are and who you're with. This can often be eye-opening, and you might start to see patterns. When you're looking at this, you want to ask yourself things like, when is your energy at its lowest and its highest? How do you feel in the morning compared to the evening? Do you notice lower energy towards the end of a day or the end of a work week? Do you notice a bit of a boom or bust pattern? This is a pattern of usually having 1 to 2 good days followed by 1 to 2 bad days, which might be an indication that you've overdone it on the good days. It can also be helpful to ask others if they've noticed anything that stands out about your energy levels, because this can provide a bit of an objective view. For example, your spouse might notice that you seem exhausted at the end of dinner, and this can allow you to reflect on what you've done leading up to this. So once you're starting to better understand your own fatigue, it's really important to communicate that with others in your life. Because fatigue's a hidden symptom, people might not understand what your fatigue experience is like. And without that understanding, it's hard for them to be able to support you in the right way. You might consider setting the stage by having a more general conversation about your fatigue experience, what you're realizing helps, makes it worse, and what your plan is moving forward. Think about who you'd like to have these conversations with, what you'd like to share, and how to best do this. It might seem like an exhausting or stressful conversation to have, but it does help to lay the foundation to ask for more support later on. It's also good to develop some in the moment strategies that you can use when your fatigue is high and you really don't have the energy to go into a lengthy explanation of how you're feeling. One of my favorite tips is to learn the habit of saying, "Let me think about it," when people ask things of you. What this does is just gives you the time and space to reflect when you're less fatigued before committing to things that might be outside of your capacity. You can also consider using a stoplight system, such as a green, yellow, or red light, to share your energy levels in the moment. For example, if your spouse starts talking to you about planning a vacation, but your cognitive fatigue is high and it's not a good time, this can be a helpful, quick way to communicate where you're at in the moment and reduce frustration and improve communication. There are also other good tips and a resource that's put out by the MS Trust in the UK called Explaining MS to Others, if you're looking for more information. Initial treatment of fatigue involves treating contributing factors, which are also called secondary factors. A good way to think about these factors is they're things that would cause fatigue in anyone, if not well managed. For example, if I didn't have a good night's sleep before recording this talk, I might feel more likely to be fatigued throughout the experience. The difference is I wouldn't be adding that poor sleep fatigue on top of MS fatigue. This is why it's important than ever to manage these factors, as they can add to your already existing neurological fatigue. While we're not going to go into a lot of detail in all of these factors, it's important to make sure that you're getting a good night's sleep, both quality and quantity. You're treating any underlying mood issues such as depression or anxiety. You're eating a well-balanced, healthy diet and maintaining your hydration. You're getting enough physical activity. You're treating any ongoing pain. And it can also be helpful to review your medications with either a pharmacist or a doctor, just to make sure that none of the medications you're on are also contributing to fatigue. So now we're going to talk a little bit about sleep, as this is one of the more important contributing factors. Certain sleep disorders, such as restless leg syndrome and sleep apnea, are more common in people with MS. Also, a lot of symptoms of MS, such as nerve pain, tight muscles, or bladder issues that cause you to get up to the bathroom at night, can also keep you from getting a good night's sleep. If you're noticing difficulty falling asleep or you're waking up frequently, this will worsen your fatigue. If you don't feel rested when you wake up in the morning and you start your day with high fatigue, this can be a sign that your sleep needs to be optimized. You can consider naps in your day if you're feeling tired and you're not getting enough sleep, but just make sure to keep them short, less than 30 minutes, and early enough in your day that they're not going to reduce your drive for sleep at nighttime. Now we'll talk a bit about the importance of exercise. It might seem like exercise uses up energy and results in higher fatigue, but it is quite important in regular exercise to maintain your energy levels and help manage your fatigue. Weakness and fatigue in MS are thought to be caused by poor transmission of messages by damaged nerves. Muscles that aren't regularly used get weak and require more energy to complete tasks. This can lead to a cycle of decline, as an already weak muscle that's not used will get further weakened. Regardless of MS, a lack of activity will lead to increased fatigue. Having said that, you don't want to spend a great deal of energy and exercise yourself to the point of exhaustion. That can make your fatigue worse. Exercise that works on building up endurance and strength in muscles without increasing fatigue is beneficial. There is no single best exercise for everyone. You'll want to find something that suits you, is sustainable, and that you enjoy. When you're in better physical condition, everyday activities like showering, unloading the dishwasher, vacuuming become easier and draw less energy. When you're exercising, you'll also want to consider overheating and manage that by exercising in a cool space. You'll also want to pace yourself. It might be better to do a longer workout with more breaks than burning yourself out. There is a lot of research supporting different types of exercises, such as vestibular training, treadmill training, and elliptical training to manage fatigue in people with MS. If you'd like more support with incorporating exercise, speak with a physiotherapist. You might want to consider using mobility aids as well as a way to reduce the amount of energy required for walking. For example, using walking poles can be beneficial if you experience muscle fatigue in your legs. They've been shown to reduce the work your legs are doing by about 30%, transferring this work instead to your arms. Speak with a physiotherapist to help you choose the mobility aid that is right for you. You could also consider using a parking permit for people with disabilities to save your energy having to walk from your car. Remember, with gait aids and parking permits, you don't necessarily need to use them all the time. They can be tools in your toolbox that you rely on days when your fatigue is higher and you want to save your energy for other things. For example, consider using your parking permit at a large shopping mall so that you have more energy to walk around indoors. Also, consider limiting your dual tasking. What dual tasking is it's doing a cognitive task at the same time as a physical task. It's been shown in research that people with MS experience a greater cost when doing things like walking and talking at the same time, and that can lead to higher fatigue. This is because your physical movements might now require a little more cognitive effort, like attention, than they did before, and that leaves less attention to focus on a cognitive task. Ask yourself, when going for a walk, are you less tired if you're alone compared to with a friend? If so, this is good information to know. It's not to say there aren't social and mood benefits to walking with a friend, but now you can more selectively decide when you're going to do this. For some people, it's also important to manage heat when they have MS. Even a small rise in your core body temperature can make fatigue worse. Avoid hot drinks, hot showers, and exercising in hot weather. Try using cooling products if they work for you. This might be as simple as a cool cloth around your neck on a hot day, or something a bit more in depth like using an air conditioner if you live in a hot climate. Also, make sure to keep hydrated so that you can manage your core body temperature. Now that we've talked about maximizing energy, the rest of our time together is going to focus on energy management. So what is energy management? In its simplest form, it means changing the energy demands of an activity. This can be done in 3 different ways. The first is changing the environment in which you do the activity. Think of not just the physical space, but also the social space. For example, you could go for a walk along a busy street, and that might use more cognitive energy than going for a walk through a park where there's less noise and less need to pay attention to traffic. You can also change the activity itself. This might mean doing it for a shorter amount of time, breaking it up, or doing it in a different way. An example here might be considering cleaning your car over the course of 2 days, 1 day for the outside and 1 day for the inside, instead of doing it all at once in 1 day. You can also make changes to yourself. This might mean shifting your priorities so that you can delegate to others. It might mean building up your skills or abilities to result in activities taking less energy. For example, building up your leg strength might result in less fatigue with walking. What's good about this approach is it doesn't necessarily focus on doing less, just doing things differently. Now we'll go through the 4 principles of using your energy more efficiently. These are often referred to collectively as energy conservation principles, and they include planning, prioritizing, pacing, and positioning. So let's talk about planning. Planning ahead helps to conserve energy. Think about what you have to do not only in your current day, but also in your week ahead or further into your month, and this can help you to avoid repetition. Planning will allow you to spread heavier tasks throughout your week. It also helps to reduce cognitive demand. For example, planning ahead for where you're going to park when you're going out avoids stress and the need to think on the spot. Today, technology makes it easy to get organized. There are a lot of different apps and tools that you can use to simplify everyday tasks like grocery shopping and meal planning. Other examples that incorporate planning include planning ahead for errands so that you're getting things that you might need next week and avoiding frequent trips back and forth to the store. You'll also want to plan for rest breaks in between activities to recharge your energy levels. Prioritizing is pretty straightforward. The reality is you do have a limited amount of energy in the day, and you'll want to decide how you're spending it. You might think about making a list each day and categorizing it into things that you have to do, such as showering and eating, things that you want to do, maybe having coffee with a friend, and things that you feel you should do, like washing the car or cleaning the bathroom. For the things that are on your should do list, you might want to consider, do you have to do them? Can they be delegated to someone else? Can you take the car through the car wash instead of washing it by hand? If you can try and eliminate the should do's, you'll have more energy to spend on the things that you have to do and want to do in a day. A good way to prioritize is to challenge your old habits. Do you really need to keep doing your grocery shopping in person, or can you ask someone else to do this or do it online? If it's affordable for you, consider hiring a housekeeper to save energy from cleaning. A common mistake that most people make is trying to get as much as they can done in the morning and early afternoon and then resting. This can lead to a crash in energy levels in the afternoon that are harder and take longer to recover from. A good rule of thumb is that it should take no more than 2 hours of rest to recover from an activity. If it does, let's say you've sat on the couch for a couple hours after making dinner and you're still fatigued, it likely means you've overdone it. It's important with fatigue to rest often and take short breaks throughout the day. One of the more important ways to manage fatigue is to actually rest before you're tired. If you typically feel your energy levels drop around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you might take a rest at noon. You also might want to consider what your ideal rest activity ratio is. So that is, how much activity can you tolerate before you need a rest? This might vary depending on the activity, but it can sometimes help you to better plan your days. Another way to incorporate pacing is to alternate between activities that require different types of energy. For example, after spending an hour on the phone catching up with a friend, you might feel high cognitive fatigue and even emotional fatigue. This might not mean that you need to lie down and take a nap, but you might benefit from switching to a relaxing physical activity instead that doesn't require a lot of cognitive energy. Last, keep in mind the concept of dual tasking or multitasking. We all use more energy and are less productive and less efficient when we try to do two things at once. Turn off the TV when you're making dinner. Work on one thing at a time. Take a break and move on to the next. In today's busy world, we're all guilty of multitasking, but it's important to remember it really does use up more energy. Now we're going to talk a little about the importance of rest, because rest can be a really good way to pace yourself. For most people with MS fatigue, the need to rest occurs because of primary physiological fatigue. So for example, resting your legs by sitting on a park bench during a walk helps you to recover your physical energy. Also, when you're experiencing cognitive fatigue or cognitive overload, taking a brain break can help you recover your cognitive energy. If you can start incorporating short, regular breaks in your day to rest, you're going to maintain your energy levels better throughout the course of the day, as opposed to hitting a wall and struggling to recover from that. Think about how you can best incorporate rest into your day. It might mean taking a nap or just lying down in a quiet space. It might mean sitting in your car with the seat reclined in the parking lot before driving home after work. Most importantly, try to avoid reading or being on your phone when you truly need a rest. Your physical space and how you position yourself within it and move within it can also make a difference in your fatigue. Body mechanics is a term used to describe the ways we move and go about our daily lives. It includes how we hold our bodies when we sit, when we stand, lift things, carry things, bend, and sleep. Using good body mechanics actually reduces fatigue with physical tasks. When possible, sit to complete physical tasks that don't require walking. Sitting usually uses about 25% less energy than standing when doing the same task. Consider sitting in the shower or sitting to do your meal prep. You also want to consider using your power zone, which is roughly the area between your shoulders and your hips, and try to work within that zone. Anytime you're reaching outside of this zone, you're using more energy. Think about changing a light bulb overhead. This is something that uses a lot of energy compared to changing a light bulb that's at chest height. When you can, move things close to your body. When you're using your larger muscles, you're also more efficiently using your physical energy compared to smaller muscles. Avoid any awkward twisting, reaching, or bending, because this will result in higher fatigue. If you are working, consider how you can incorporate these principles at work. As I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, unmanaged fatigue is one of the main reasons people stop working. So if you can start bringing some of these principles into the workplace, work becomes more sustainable. Don't forget about your pre-work routine and your commute as well. For example, can you simplify your morning routine so that you're using less energy to get ready for work? Can you shorten your commute or at least reduce the energy demands of your commute? For example, if you take transit to work, you might want to wear earplugs to reduce the cognitive load that's coming in from noise on the bus or the SkyTrain. If you're comfortable asking for accommodations from your employer, you can ask for their support to make changes to help you better manage your fatigue while staying at work. If you work at a desk, consider requesting an ergonomic assessment, which might address some of the positioning aspects related to your fatigue. Some general accommodations might be asking for a modified work schedule, taking more shorter, frequent breaks, or working from home. If you're experiencing more physical fatigue, you might need to avoid physically heavier duties. You might want to reduce standing and walking and use your rest breaks to sit. If your fatigue is more cognitive in nature, you might want a quieter space to work within and rest within, and you might consider using earplugs to reduce distractions or be able to focus on one thing at a time. I hope this has given you a better understanding of how to go about managing your energy levels. It's likely that you'll need some support in this, so think about where you're going to access that support. It might mean asking family or friends to support you as you start to set some goals and make some changes. It might mean asking your employer for a more formal accommodation to help you continue working productively. You also might want to ask support from your healthcare team. If you have access to an occupational therapist in your MS clinic, this might be a good place to start. If not, ask your neurologist or MS clinic nurse for a referral to one in your area. You can also seek support from a physiotherapist, especially if your fatigue is more physical in nature. There are also a few online energy management programs that might provide further support to you. One is called Fatigue Take Control and is produced through the National MS Society. It consists of 5 videos that review a lot of aspects of fatigue. Have a look at the National MS Society website to access this program. Another online fatigue management program that's self-paced is available through the MS Trust website as well. So you might consider taking a look there. I'd like to end today with some of what I consider to be the key messages that I hope to have conveyed around MS fatigue. The first is that fatigue is real and it's related to your MS, and it's very different from just being tired. Everyone's fatigue experience is different. For some, cognitive fatigue is a big limitation, but physical fatigue might be non-existent. For others, it's the opposite. What's really important is to identify your own fatigue patterns and target strategies that are specific to managing your experience. You don't want to try to push through fatigue. It just doesn't work and leads to a cycle of overactivity and underactivity, or boom and bust, which can be discouraging. You need to learn how to rest. It doesn't need to be long rest breaks, but you'll want to start incorporating pauses in between activities, and that will help you to notice less crashing in your energy levels. Try doing things differently. Get creative and don't get stuck in thinking that the only way to manage fatigue is doing less. Recruit your friends, your family, your employers, and your healthcare team to support you as you learn to manage fatigue. It does really take a village, and these people can offer valuable suggestions and also help motivate you to make changes day to day. The last point here is to be patient. Sometimes managing fatigue takes trial and error, and it will take some time before you figure out what the best balance for you is. but I encourage you to stick with it, and you can be sure to feel more in control of your fatigue and the impact that it has on your day-to-day life. Thank you all for listening, and I wish you all the best of luck as you start on your journey in managing your fatigue.